You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Democrats in Washington are proposing a so-called Green New Deal. It's a proposal to pull the country away from its reliance on oil and coal and natural gas and onto a more eco-friendly energy grid.
Climate change and our environmental challenges are one of the biggest existential threats to our way of life, not just as a nation, but as a world. And in order for us to combat that threat, we must be as ambitious and innovative in our solution as possible.
When we talk about a Green New Deal, we are talking about jobs and justice. We are talking about the greatest blue-collar job creation program in a generation.
But without control of the Senate or the White House, that plan appears dead on arrival, at least for now, and remains a talking point for both sides.
Last week, they introduced a massive government takeover that would destroy our incredible economic gains. They introduced the so-called Green New Deal. It sounds like a high school term paper that got a low mark. It would shut down American energy, which I don't think the people in Texas are going to be happy with that.
So could the State House in Springfield, where Democrats hold supermajorities in both chambers and the governor's office, could the State House here be more fertile soil for some of those ideas of the environmental left? Joining me now is Ann Williams, representative from the 11th District, Chicago's northwest side. You're really leading the charge on a state-level initiative for, I believe it's called the Clean Energy Jobs Act. Is that?
Yes, you got it.
Okay.
I'll be the sponsor of the bill when it gets introduced, and I'm very excited about this initiative. It's a very comprehensive way to move Illinois forward in terms of renewable energy and clean energy.
There will likely be some opposition, I expect. This bill calls for phasing out coal, gas, oil, any carbon energy by 2030, 2031. That's
Yes.
not very far away.
It sure
I expect
isn't.
they're not going to
Sure
go
isn't.
down without a fight.
Well, it's interesting. I think even those that work in the coal communities and the coal power sector recognize that the coal plants have a limited lifespan. Each coal plant, I think, is about 50 years of a lifespan, and many in Illinois are reaching the end of their lifespans. Also, I think for obvious reasons, people recognize that we need to find ways to phase out fossil fuels. The dangers of climate change are very real. We don't have 50, 60, 70 years to worry about climate change. We need to worry about it today. So I think taking proactive steps toward moving toward renewable energy and a carbon-free energy sector are critical. But the beauty of this bill is we're not leaving those coal communities behind. There are provisions in this bill that would provide for clean energy opportunities to be hopefully located and considerations given to the communities that lose the fossil fuel burning plants.
Yeah, explain that a little bit, because I was looking through the bill and I saw some of that highlighted in there, that environmental justice communities is a phrase often used. What is that? What is an environmental justice
Environmental
community?
justice communities usually refers to communities that have been disproportionately impacted by pollution. And these are communities that, for what different reasons, they're often communities of color, different socioeconomic statuses. They have unfortunately borne the burden of industrial pollution, lead in water, and numerous other pollutants. They have been left behind. So one of the goals of this bill is to ensure, as we move forward with a clean energy economy, we ensure that no community is left behind. And that applies to urban communities who are faced with a lot of pollution, former industrial sites that are still quite dirty, plants that have just recently closed. And this also includes rural communities where the same issues can occur.
I was looking through some of the details here. The group that put this together says that you want to phase out fossil fuels, put in or install 40 million solar panels, 2,500 wind turbines, and I see a lot of conversation or talk about, in a press conference that you guys held Thursday, there was discussion about jobs and the economy. This is a lot of stuff.
It's very comprehensive. But
So where does the state get involved, and how does the state need to interact with this proposal?
Well, there are a myriad of ways that the state will get involved. If you recall, 2 years ago, we passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, and it provided for increased attention and opportunities for investment in wind and solar. As a result of this, a report just recently came out, I think in February, showing that Illinois was the third leading state in the country in development of new solar jobs. So that shows that the initial steps we took 2 years ago are working, but we need to expand on that now. There is a wait list of companies wanting to invest both in community solar and utility scale solar. And these are all things that can help get us to our goal. But we do need to have policies in place to allow that to happen.
But you're asking for money too. You're asking the taxpayers to sort of get behind this idea. And so people are going to be interested. I think I saw a request for $25 million to go to a Clean Jobs Workforce Hub. Is that a request that would come out of Governor Pritzker's current budget, or is that new money on top of it? Where would that money come from?
Well, there will be some initial state investment, but here's the good news about renewables. Over time, it has been shown, and other states have the data to prove it, that the more you invest in renewables, the better return. So it's not only ultimately less expensive to utilize solar and wind, they're just less expensive to build, they're less expensive to run and operate. Over time, when you throw in energy efficiency, the bill provides for numerous energy efficiency programming. When you take all that together, that's going to result in, over time, benefits for the state, both job creation, economic development, lower costs for consumers. If you use less energy, it costs less.
You use the phrase job creation. Isn't it job replacement? Aren't you replacing jobs in oil and gas and coal with jobs in wind, solar, and renewables?
Well, the phrase I've heard used to refer to fossil fuels is inevitability. It is inevitable that over time we are not going to continue to utilize fossil fuels to generate power.
I think that might be news to them.
Well, I've heard it from some of the people in the world of coal too. So I don't think you don't see new coal plants being built the same way that they have in the past. The jobs can be had in renewables and in solar and wind specifically. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs that can be created, energy efficiency programs too. So we believe and we hope through the use of things like the hubs that you reference that we can look at those communities where jobs are lost or jobs are phased out over time and replace them with clean energy opportunities. And there is no reason that clean energy has to be located in any certain area. You can have wind farms, you can have solar farms, you can have community solar, you can have utility scale solar anywhere throughout the state. And this bill is about planning. So we're not just going to wait for the coal plants to close through market forces or problems or whatever might happen.
You're going to pressure them to close sooner.
We are going to close where we need to have them close, but we're going to have a plan in place to make sure those workers and those communities are not as impacted in an adverse way. Right now, coal plants can close with no notice to the residents and the workers and be left in the dust. And speaking of dust, left in very toxic environments with coal ash being unmitigated and remediated, and that's a problem.
This proposal of yours talks about new investment from private dollars and from the state itself going into this, but a lot of investment has already been made into things like, for example, something people at home will recognize, the Keystone Pipeline, which some may not know goes through Illinois, a factor of it. And if you talk to the people behind some of those projects, oil and otherwise, they're saying that if we go through with Governor Pritzker's plan to go completely renewable energy or clean energy by 2050, that it's going to have a devastating impact on the economy. We heard that from President Trump, who said the Washington Green New Deal is going to kill jobs. And so how do you counter that narrative that's already out there, that's already being pushed, that this is going to kill jobs? And I believe a Wyoming Republican Congresswoman said that it was a fantasy, that all these jobs could be realized.
She needs to be educated on the facts, because that is not the case. We have proof. 2 years ago, we passed, as I said, the Future Energy Jobs Act. And I was actually on a radio interview, which I watched recently, and the person who was opposed to the bill was talking about how no jobs would be created, and it was a fallacy and a farce. Well, 2 years later, I have a report to prove it, that over 1,500 new jobs have been created, and more are to come. The demand for solar, the demand for wind energy, it's there in Illinois. But if we don't have the infrastructure and the tools in place, we won't be able to accommodate it. And we won't be able to realize realize the incredible benefits of utilizing renewable energy and creating these jobs. So there is, first of all, there's a proven track record of success, but we've reached our limit. There's almost a clean energy cliff, if you will. If we don't expand the law to allow for further development and investment in solar, the companies simply won't stay in Illinois. They want to be here, we want them to be here.
All right, and I'm always curious which kind of groups come together to back a certain proposal. I think it's called the Clean Jobs Coalition, is that right? I saw at the press conference that you guys held Thursday, there was a minister there, and the group talks about a religious or faith-based support of this. What's the connection there between the...
That's a great question, and that's one of the most exciting things about the bill. One of our pillars is equity, and it's about providing, as the clean jobs future happens and comes to Illinois, we want to make sure not only that Illinois is 100% clean and renewable energy, we want to make sure that 100% of Illinois residents can be involved in that new clean economy. And that is everything from job training programs to touching base with those in the community who have been adversely impacted by pollution and fossil fuel impacts for years. Going to those communities and bringing opportunities there in wind, solar, and whatever else we can. And it's about providing equity as we're moving forward with clean energy. And that's something that's doable, and it's something that's not always talked about. In this bill, we talk about it a lot.
Can you get it done this year, this session?
I'm hopeful that we can. We have, as you mentioned, a lot of interests in this issue. We have the energy companies, we have solar and wind developers, we have community organizations. The environmental justice movement is strong, both in communities of color as well as in rural communities. I think while we all have the same goal, we may have a little bit of discussion first before we determine how to get there, but I'm confident we'll be able to get it done. Plus, we have a governor who's committed to the concept of renewable energy and a clean energy economy, and that is extremely exciting for me.
Always helps to have the governor on your side.
Absolutely, it does.
All right, Representative Ann Williams, thanks for joining us. We're back in just a moment.